Imagine, like a time capsule, buried deep, holding not just like, trinkets or toys, but like a chilling mystery. A mystery that has haunted a small Minnesota town for almost 50 years. And we could crack open that time capsule today and dive deep into the unsolved murders of Mary and Suzanne Raker.
It's a case that even after all this time, you know, feels incredibly raw. 2 young lives, just full of promise, cut short, and a family and a community left grappling with why and how.
Yeah, you're right. The ripple effects are just immeasurable. So let's start by just like getting to know Mary and Suzanne. Mary was the older sister, and she was like the picture of vibrant energy. Had this infectious passion for teaching. She even turned their basement into a makeshift classroom for the neighborhood kids.
Oh, wow.
There's even a story about how their mother found Mary like conducting a full-blown lesson to a room full of empty desks.
It's adorable. It really paints this picture of someone who really loved learning and sharing that love with others, It's such a stark contrast to the darkness that would soon kind of engulf their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suzanne, on the other hand, was like the quiet observer, a bookworm. She was talented, played the violin. She was described as serious, introspective.
Yeah.
The kind of girl who really noticed the details that other people missed. Together, they were a study in contrasts, each enriching the other's life.
Yeah. It really makes their sudden disappearance all the more jarring.
Right.
It was Labor Day, 1974, and the Raker sisters were last seen at Czar's department store in St. Cloud. A neighbor saw them walking towards the grocery department.
Which, as we now know, was closed that day because of the holiday.
Right.
It's a detail that might seem like insignificant at first.
Yeah.
But in a case like this, every detail matters.
Absolutely. Every detail matters. And their disappearance just triggered this chaotic investigation. Multiple jurisdictions were involved, and there's a real lack of coordination. And that really hampered the early efforts.
And so the family was left in the dark, desperate for answers, while investigators struggled to just make sense of the few clues that they had. And years went by. The trail went cold.
Yeah. And then 2 years later, a chillingly similar crime occurred in the same town. A 14-year-old girl named Sue Dukowitz. She was abducted, driven to a secluded area, and stabbed multiple times. But unlike the Raker sisters, Sue survived.
Oh my gosh, it's almost unimaginable the terror that she must have felt. But her survival brought a new suspect to light, a local teenager named Herb Notch Jr., who, along with an accomplice, was convicted of the attack on Sue.
Yeah, the attack on Sue Dukowitz just sent shockwaves through the community.
Of course.
And it also raised this critical question for investigators. Could there be a connection to the Raker case?
I mean, the parallels are really hard to ignore. Both cases involved abduction, stabbing, and attempts to conceal the victims. I mean, it makes you wonder, could this troubled teenager be responsible for both of these horrific acts?
Right. So Herb was brought in for questioning, even polygraphed, but the results were inconclusive. And so the investigation continued to kind of explore other avenues.
Yeah. One of those avenues led to Michael Bartoszewski, who was later convicted of murdering a young girl in Colorado. So investigators looked into his possible connection to the Raker case, but ultimately ruled him out due to significant differences in the crimes.
And then as the 1990s brought the Catholic sex abuse scandal into the national spotlight, Father Richard Eckroth, a local priest accused of abuse, was scrutinized as a potential suspect in the Raker case.
Yeah. He voluntarily took a polygraph and gave a DNA sample, but no evidence linked him to the murders. And so while he was cleared in the Raker case, it's still really important to acknowledge the seriousness of the allegations against him regarding the abuse.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even within a tragedy like this, there can be these other layers of pain and injustice.
Throughout all of this, one person never gave up hope: Rita Raker, the girl's aunt. She relentlessly pursued justice for her nieces, and she even involved the VDOC Society.
Yeah. The VDOC Society is such a unique organization. It's comprised of retired law enforcement professionals who specialize in solving cold cases, and they bring just a fresh set of eyes and decades of experience to these really complex investigations.
So in 2005, the VDOC Society reviewed the Raker case and agreed with investigators that they were potentially focusing on the right suspects. But despite their expertise, a definitive breakthrough remained elusive.
Right. And then in 2014, the name Lloyd Lee Welch surfaced. He was already a figure of national interest because of his involvement in the disappearance of Sheila and Catherine Lyon, known as the Lyon sisters.
Yeah, that case was just a heartbreaking mystery. 2 young sisters vanished from a shopping center. It's like a parent's worst nightmare.
Exactly. And Lloyd Welch was ultimately convicted in the Lyon sisters' case, although their bodies were never found. But it was during this time that a woman named Joran came forward, and she claimed that Lloyd had attacked her in 1974, just days before the Raker murders.
Chilling. Did she provide any details about the attack? Anything that might connect him to the Reagans?
She stated that during the attack, Lloyd had talked about his fascination with sisters,
Oh, wow.
which obviously raised red flags for the Raker case.
Right.
But unfortunately, there were no records of her report to the police at the time.
So another possible lead just turns into a dead end.
Yeah.
It seems like every time investigators got close, the answers slipped further away.
Yeah.
But then in 2016, a journalist with Fox 9 in Minneapolis published this detailed investigative piece on the Raker case, and it brought to light previously undisclosed details about the murders, including just striking similarities to the attack on Sue Dukowitz that hadn't been publicly connected before.
And remember, Herb had worked in the grocery department at Zars during the summer of 1974, the same department the Raker girls were last seen heading towards.
It feels like all roads are leading back to Herb. But did the authorities finally, zero in on him as their prime suspect?
Well, publicly they acknowledged the similarities, but they stopped short of officially naming him as a suspect. But behind the scenes, things were about to take a deeply personal turn because by 2017, Herb was on his deathbed, suffering from liver failure. And Rita Raker, who had never given up hope of finding answers, decided to go visit him.
Can you imagine the weight of that decision? To face the man you believe took your nieces from you, not for revenge, but for answers.
It just speaks volumes about Rita's strength and her unwavering commitment to the truth. She wasn't seeking vengeance. She was seeking closure.
So what happened during that visit? Did Herb offer any explanation? Any remorse?
Well, according to Rita, he was angry and bitter. He denied any involvement, but he uttered two phrases that have haunted her ever since. He said, "Why can't you just put it all behind you? I'm going to hell."
Gosh, those are chilling words, especially in that context. Did Herb elaborate on what he meant? Did he offer any further details?
No, he didn't. He clung to his denial. But his demeanor, coupled with those cryptic statements, left a lasting impact on Rita. And sadly, Herb died shortly after that visit, taking whatever secrets he might have had to the grave.
So we're left with a mountain of questions and very few answers. Did Herb act alone? If not, who helped him? Stay with us as we unpack this question and more, right after a short break.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of our deep dive into the Raker sisters case.
So we're back, and I don't know about you, but I'm still reeling from Rita's visit with Herb on his deathbed. It's such a chilling reminder of the human cost of this tragedy, but it also raises a crucial question. If Herb was involved, did he act alone?
Yeah, that question has really plagued investigators for decades, and there are several factors that kind of suggest the possibility of an accomplice. For one thing, the lack of defensive wounds on the Raker sisters is puzzling. It raises questions about how a 15-year-old boy could overpower two girls without a struggle.
You're right. It seems unlikely, especially if they sense danger.
Right.
And it makes you wonder if someone else was involved, someone who might have helped Herb gain control of this situation.
Exactly. And if we look at Herb's history, we see this pattern of him committing crimes with other people. Like the attack on Sue Dukowitz, for example, involved another teenager, which suggests that Herb wasn't always a lone wolf.
So it makes you think, if he had an accomplice in that case, could he have had one in this case as well? Someone who helped him plan and execute this horrible crime.
That is the question that investigators have been grappling with. And there is one individual who has kind of emerged as a figure of interest, a man we'll call Roy.
Wait, isn't Roy the same teenager who, along with some friends, discovered Suzanne's body in the quarry? The one who knew Herb from school and work?
Yes, that's the one. And that connection is where things get really unsettling. Because according to accounts from the time, Roy had always been wary of Herb, even before the murders. He recalled seeing Herb lurking in the Zars parking lot on his days off, just watching people. He described him as always having a knife on him, playing with it almost obsessively.
Okay, that's definitely creepy. But did Roy have any, concrete reasons to be suspicious of Herb? Anything beyond just a bad feeling?
Well, there's this rather bizarre incident that Roy reported to the police shortly after the murders. He said he confronted Herb about the Raker girls, asking him directly if he had anything to do with their disappearance. And Herb's response: he just hissed at Roy, like a snake.
Hold on. Hissing like a snake. That's not just creepy, that's downright disturbing. So what did the police make of this incident? Did they even take it seriously?
They did. Sergeant Bollig, who was the lead investigator, confirmed that Roy's account was corroborated, meaning that the police had actually verified that this hissing incident did in fact take place.
So we have a witness who paints this disturbing picture of Herb, this chilling hissing incident. And the fact that the same witness stumbled upon Suzanne's body feels like too many coincidences to just ignore. So does this make Roy a suspect?
It certainly makes him a person of interest. But it is important to remember that suspicion alone isn't enough to implicate someone in a crime of this magnitude. Correlation doesn't always equal causation.
Right. Fair enough. But has Roy ever been, officially considered a suspect? Has he been investigated?
Sergeant Bollig has actually stated that Roy has never been formally considered a person of interest. He's cooperated with the investigation and has never exhibited any behavior that would suggest that he was involved in the murders.
Okay, so for now, Roy remains a figure kind of shrouded in mystery. Someone who knew Herb, witnessed his odd behavior, and was even present at one of the most pivotal moments in the case. It's definitely something to ponder. But you also mentioned a mutual acquaintance, another connection that might be relevant here.
Yes. This detail comes from a book that was written by a former law enforcement officer who was involved in the early stages of the investigation. And the book mentions that Mary knew a boy from Luxembourg who also worked in the grocery department at Czar's. And this boy was in turn friends with another boy that Mary knew.
So we have a web of connections here. Mary knew Herb, who was from Luxembourg and worked at Czar's. She also knew this other boy from Luxembourg who worked at Czar's. And that boy was friends with yet another boy that Mary knew.
Does this web of acquaintances hold any significance to the case?
That's the mystery. The book just doesn't elaborate on the significance of this mutual acquaintance or provide any names. It simply mentions the connection without any further explanation.
So it's like a puzzle with a missing piece. And we're just left wondering, who is this mystery boy? And could he hold the key to understanding what happened to Mary and Suzanne?
It just adds another layer of complexity
Yeah.
to an already convoluted case. And there's one more piece of the puzzle that we need to discuss. A name that Herb mentioned on his deathbed.
Wait, Herb actually mentioned a name. Could this be the breakthrough we've been waiting for? The missing link that cracks the case wide open?
We can't say for sure. But during her hospital visit, Raker said that Herb actually uttered a name that she believed could be the name of an accomplice.
Oh my gosh, this is huge. What was the name? Unfortunately, that is where the trail goes cold. Rita couldn't recall the name when she was later asked by investigators. And Sergeant Bollig declined to comment on whether Herb had in fact mentioned a name, or if any leads were pursued based on that information.
It's like taking 2 steps forward and then being yanked back 3. So we're left with this possible accomplice hiding in plain sight, this mysterious network of connections, and a name whispered on a deathbed that could hold the key to this entire mystery. It's almost too much to process. Where do we even go from here?
Well, despite all the dead ends and the unanswered questions, the investigation remains active. Sergeant Bollig is committed to finding justice for Mary and Suzanne, and he believes that a resolution to the case is still possible.
After all this time, it's heartening to know that someone is still fighting for them, still searching for those answers. But what is being done now to finally bring this case to a close? Are there any new leads or avenues of investigation being explored?
That's what we'll explore when we return for the final part of our deep dive.
So we've journeyed through all the twists and turns of the Raker sisters case, uncovering layers of intrigue and heartbreak along the way. You know, it's one of those stories that just stays with you, a reminder of how fragile life is and the enduring power of hope.
It really is. It's also a case that really underscores just the complexities of cold case investigations, the passage of time, fading memories, the loss of potential witnesses. It creates these significant challenges.
But even after all these years, is there still hope for a resolution? What are the chances that this case will finally be solved?
Well, the Raker case still remains officially unsolved, but the pursuit of justice continues. Sergeant Bollig is still actively working the case. He seems determined to bring closure to the Raker family and the community.
That's reassuring to hear. It'd be so easy to just give up after all this time. But it sounds like Sergeant Bollig isn't letting this case fade into obscurity.
Exactly, and there are reasons for optimism. Advances in DNA technology, for instance, offer these new avenues for investigation. Even trace amounts of DNA that might have been overlooked decades ago could hold the key to identifying who is responsible.
Yeah. DNA has revolutionized criminal investigations, and it's helped solve countless cold cases. It would be incredible if it could finally bring justice for Mary and Suzanne.
Absolutely. And there's also a $50,000 reward being offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for the murders. And this incentive might encourage someone with knowledge of the case to come forward.
Wow, $50,000 is a significant amount. Perhaps enough to finally break the silence and bring some long-awaited answers.
It's certainly possible. And remember, even seemingly insignificant details can be crucial in a cold case investigation. Something that someone might have dismissed as irrelevant back in 1974 could unlock the mystery today. It's all about connecting those dots. Maybe someone out there has a piece of the puzzle that we're missing. So what does this all mean for our listeners? What can they do to help bring this case to a close?
Well, I think just spreading awareness about the case is crucial. The more people who know about the Raker sisters, the greater the chance that someone with information will come forward. Even sharing this deep dive with your friends and family could make a difference.
Yeah, you never know who might be listening, who might have a connection to the case, however small. That seemingly insignificant detail they remember could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and if you have any personal connections to St. Cloud or the surrounding area, just take some time to reflect. Did you know the Raker sisters? Did you frequent Czar's department store? Did you ever cross paths with Urbnoch Jr. or any of the other individuals we discussed?
Sometimes the smallest details, the ones we tend to forget, can be the most revealing. It's worth just taking a moment to think back, to see if anything resurfaces. I think the Raker case is really a story of loss and mystery, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. It reminds us that even in the face of what seem like insurmountable obstacles, hope endures.
Yeah. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the power of memory, and the importance of never giving up on the search for the truth.
And while the answers remain elusive for now, the investigation continues. With the combined efforts of law enforcement, dedicated individuals like Reader Raker, and even podcast listeners like you, we can keep the memory of Mary and Suzanne alive. And maybe, just maybe, help bring their killers to justice.
If you have any information about the Raker sisters case, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, please contact the authorities. You can find the contact information in our show notes. Even the smallest detail could be the missing piece that finally cracks this case wide open.
And be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more deeply researched and captivating true crime stories that go beyond the headlines. We're dedicated to shedding light on these complex cases, examining the evidence, and exploring all angles, because every victim deserves a voice, and every story deserves to be told.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Raker sisters case. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.